YouTube. This is just kind of a review slash tutorial on the Cosmo Racing cold air intake for the 2008-2009 Subaru Legacy. I was going to make a tutorial on the install of this intake, but I had a little bit of a learning curve to do myself, so I decided I'm just going to do an after video of it and maybe give some tips, because it does come with instructions, but the instructions aren't exactly the most clear, and there's a few things I did that the instructions didn't say to do. So first thing they say is that all the hardware is included. I call BS from hell, because they want you to use the here, I'll give you a look at one here. They want you to use the stock clamps on the hoses, and this is a stock one. As you can see, it's just barely on that nipple. The stock hoses and the stock clamps do not work worth shit. Like right here, this one, the stock one is one of these ones. And my buddy actually told me those are single-use ones. So what you're going to want to do before you install this, you want to go get some of these screw-on hose clamps. They're going to make the job twice as easy, at least. So yeah, this hose, it barely fits on there. Like, eventually I'm probably just going to replace the hose end clamp with something nicer. This one here, you didn't have to replace the hose. The stock hose actually hooked on perfect. You just got to get a new clamp. This part hooked into the stock resonator box, and it just kind of sits there now. You know, those all come with, all the big hose clamps come with it. So it does come with some hardware. And also the hose here, you do have to replace this hose because the stock one doesn't reach, and it's also really small and shitty and uses a crappy clamp. So I'd recommend you gotta swap this one out. It's really easy. Just take the stock one out, get some hose clamps, and you're gonna want to cut the hose that they include because it's way too long. I actually probably have enough extra to do the other side if I want, but the instructions only say you have to change this hose here. I've seen some installs where they plug the stock hose into the one that they provide. I wouldn't recommend that. It seems like a really shitty connection. You're gonna get an air leak doing that. I just recommend changing the whole thing. As you can see down there, it plugs into the block right next to your spark plugs. And I've got another aftermarket hose clamp holding that on. You're gonna really want to tighten that one because that part is made for the smaller hose that is stock. So yeah, you're really gonna want to tighten them, but these things are fucking heaven. They fixed it right up. And also the instructions say to add the filter portion last. You're not gonna want to do that. It don't fit very nicely. You're gonna want to set the entire assembly in at once. You're gonna want to assemble the whole thing first. And honestly, I don't like how it really mounts in here. This is the only point where it actually is fastened to the car. As you can see, there's 3 holes down here below it, and I wish they just made something that you could screw into those holes to support it a little bit, because I mean, it has quite a bit of ply. I mean, it's not horrible, but I can't say I trust that 100%. And the nut barely fits on there, you know. So this part is probably the biggest pain in the ass, just because it doesn't line up perfectly. You know, the stock little piece there has a lot of ply. The other mounting plate for the resonator box you can just take out. I believe it was mounted right there. You can just take that out. It doesn't serve a purpose anymore. Okay, so once it's all installed, basically follow the instructions with my added instructions. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on YouTube of a lot of people saying your car don't run right if you reset your ECU. I gotta confirm that. This car runs like shit if you don't reset your ECU after installing this. In fact, mine pulled a check engine light on the first start, and I pulled the codes, and it read air volume out of expected range, air temperature out of expected range, which both of those things is what an air intake is supposed to do. But what the ECU does is it gets a memory and it establishes an expected range, and anything out of that range basically pops up a red flag and says something's different. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to unhook your battery for about 30 minutes. That's going to let everything die off. All the capacitors in the circuits will drain. After 30 minutes, hook it back up or reground the battery and let that sit for 15 minutes. Because the second a 12 volt is hooked back up to the battery, the ECU is going to start turning itself back on. If you try and start your car right away, right after you hook up the battery, it's going to start like shit. And I did that, I made a mistake, and it actually took like 3 cranks to actually get it to start. And I had plenty of voltage, it was just the ECU wasn't ready to start the engine. Once you do get your engine started, you're going to want to let it just sit and idle for 15 minutes. Or what I recommend is let it idle until your coolant gauge is right in the middle, because that'll give your ECU a chance to learn the new air volume and whatnot. Because on your first start, your ECU will not pull a check engine light because it actually has to relearn everything. So it doesn't have an expected range because it's establishing its range the first time you turn it on. Another thing, I recommend cleaning your mass airflow sensor when you're putting this in, just because it's good to clean your mass airflow sensor. Just get some mass airflow sensor cleaner. It's that shit that evaporates after you spray it. As far as actual installation questions, feel free to drop a comment. My YouTube page isn't very popular, so I actually can reply to pretty much every comment, because replying to 3 comments isn't that hard. But yeah, as far as a lot of people would ask, okay, what about performance? What I can say about this cold air intake is it makes the engine sound a lot meaner, first off. Anything over 3,000 RPMs is pure gold. It sounds awesome. As far as horsepower, there's a little bit better throttle response. A little bit more torque on the higher RPMs. I don't really notice shit on the lower ones. I mean, no difference besides throttle response is a little better. And then Mpg is where I see the biggest difference, honestly. I get about 2.5 miles to the gallon better in city and on highway. At the end of this video, I'm actually going to splice a video I made of it driving on a flat highway. I live in North Dakota, that's easy to find. With minimal wind. I mean, I actually recorded it today and there's like no wind. With the cruise at 75, and I did it when I was not near cars, so I didn't have any drafting or anything like that. And I was pulling about 28 highway. I was bouncing, you know, it kind of varies, but I was pulling 28 mpg, and that video will be right after this cut here. But yeah, 28 mpg. The slip that comes with the car advertises it at 20 city, 26 highway, and that's based on all perfect variables, like I said, and probably not 75 miles an hour. I'm guessing that's like 70 miles an hour. North Dakota actually has higher speed interstates than most states, I think. But all in all, that's pretty much all I can say. I do recommend the Cosmo Racing cold air intake over the short ram. You're going to get a lot more performance and MPG out of the cold air, I think. And yeah, just feel free to comment with any questions and I'll be sure to answer them for you.
Hey guys, this is just a video of my Mpg test with the cold air intake. I was on a very flat highway with a minimal windy day, and as you can see, I was getting about an average of 28 mpg. Right there at 30, I was getting a little bit of a draft off that truck, but as he pulls away, you can see I'm still sticking around 28. Cruising at 75. Trying not to get too much of a draft effect, but as you can see, I'm getting 30 with a draft effect, about 28 as the cars pass by, 27. So yeah, cold air intake definitely adds a couple mpg on the highway for sure. Definitely notice a difference with how much miles I get per tank since I reset my trip every time I fill up. I was trying to get a little bit of footage of to show that there wasn't any wind, but that's kind of hard to do with a moving vehicle. As you can see, I got the window there, but feel free to post any comments, questions, and thanks for watching. I hope this video helps.